I buried my husband on a Wednesday. By Friday, his parents were offering me $10,000 to disappear. That's not an exaggeration, not a metaphor, a literal check, crisp and cold, slid across my kitchen table like it was a business transaction, like I was selling a used car or a piece of furniture they didn't want cluttering up their perfect lives. My name is Stella, I said, staring at the check, but not touching it. And that's my son you're trying to buy. Meredith didn't flinch. Her lipstick was perfect, not a single hair out of place. Her pearls gleamed like they knew they belonged to someone who never got her hands dirty. Otis sat beside her, arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. This isn't about money, Meredith said, her voice as smooth as the silk blouse she wore. It's about what's best for Noah, my son, my baby. He was only 4, curled up on the couch behind me, watching cartoons with a blanket tucked under his chin, completely unaware that the people sitting at our table were trying to erase me from his life. You think what's best for him is to lose his mother? I said, eyes locked on hers. He's already lost his father. Otis cut in. He needs stability, tradition, a family name that means something. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out sharp and bitter. You mean your name? Meredith's mouth twitched. You're grieving, Stella. I understand. But you're not equipped for this. You're alone. No job. No plan. What kind of future can you give him? I stood up so fast my chair screeched across the floor. You didn't even like Liam, I snapped. You barely spoke to him for the last 2 years, and now you want to play Grieving Parents of the Year? Otis stood too, towering over me. Watch your tone. No, I said. You don't get to come into my house and tell me how to raise my son. Meredith slid the check closer. It's not a bribe, it's a gift. To help you. Move on. Start over. We'll take care of Noah. You can visit, of course. Supervised at first. I stared at the check. $10,000. The amount felt insulting, like they hadn't even tried to make it convincing, like they thought I was cheap, desperate. And maybe I was. I'd lost Liam in a flash. One minute he was texting me he'd be home in 10, the next I was identifying his body at the morgue. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I couldn't sleep. I hadn't figured out how to pay next month's rent. But I wasn't stupid. And I wasn't about to let them take my son. Still, I sat down. I picked up the pen. I signed the paper. Meredith exhaled, relieved. Otis nodded like a deal had been closed. They stood, gathered their things, and left with rehearsed sympathy. I waited until the door clicked shut behind them. Then I walked to the sink and turned on the water. Ice cold. I held the check under the stream and watched the ink bleed down the drain. Noah padded into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Mommy? I turned, crouched, and pulled him into my arms. Hey, baby. Everything's okay. He rested his head on my shoulder. I miss Daddy. I know, I whispered. Me too. He didn't see me pack our bags that night. He didn't know I'd already called Maya, my best friend since college, and asked her to find us a place. Anywhere far. He didn't hear me call Tyler, my brother, and ask if he could help me change my name legally, quietly. He didn't know that I wasn't running away. I was setting the stage. Because here's the thing about grief, it makes people underestimate you. They think you're broken. They think you'll roll over and let them take whatever they want. But I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. They thought they'd bought my silence, but they had no clue who they were dealing with. The first night Noah and I slept in the motel off Route 7, he curled up beside me in a twin bed with a stuffed dinosaur clutched to his chest. I lay awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to the hum of the vending machine outside our door. My phone buzzed once. Maya. Maya. Got you a place, small town, 2 states over, no questions asked. You'll like it. Sent the address. I texted back a single word. On our way. By morning, I'd cut off my old number, deleted every social account, and tossed my SIM card into a storm drain behind a gas station. Noah thought it was a game. Are we spies, Mommy? Something like that, I smiled. We're starting fresh. We drove for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't let myself. Not when Noah was watching. Not when I needed to be sharp. The town Maya found was quiet. tucked between hills and woods, the kind of place where people wave at stop signs and know each other's dogs by name. The house was a two-bedroom rental with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox, but it had a fenced yard and a washer that worked if you kicked it right. To me, it was a castle. Maya met us there with groceries, a prepaid phone, and a hug that lasted a full minute. You okay? She asked. No, I said, but I will be. We spent the next few weeks building a life. I got a job waitressing at a diner. Noah started preschool under my maiden name. I told people my husband had passed and I wanted a quiet place to raise my son. That was enough. No one pried. Then, one night, 2 months in, I got a message on the burner phone. Unknown number. Stella? I froze. No one called me that anymore. This is Calvin. I just found out about Liam. I stared at the screen. My heart thumped once, hard. Calvin, Liam's younger brother, the one no one talked about, the one who'd vanished from every family photo after he left. I hadn't seen him since our wedding. I waited a full day before replying. How did you get this number? Maya, I begged her. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to talk. I met him at a coffee shop an hour away. Neutral ground. I sat at a corner table, hoodie up, sunglasses on. He walked in, taller than I remembered, scruff on his face, wearing a worn leather jacket that looked like it had stories of its own. He saw me and stopped. For a second, he didn't move. Then he slid into the seat across from me. You look different, he said. Grief does that. He nodded. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't owe him warmth. Why now? I asked. I didn't know he was gone. No one told me. I found out through a mutual friend. I called my parents and they hung up on me. I raised an eyebrow. That tracks. He leaned forward. What happened? I told him everything. The accident, the funeral, the check, the papers. His mouth tightened with every word. They tried to buy your son? He asked, voice low. They tried to erase me. He shook his head. I believe it. You would know, I said. You left. No one ever said why. His eyes darkened. They threatened to cut me off if I didn't go to law school. I wanted to work in music. I told them no. Then they found out I was seeing someone they didn't approve of. They gave me a choice, fall in line or disappear. And you disappeared. I thought Liam would follow, but he didn't. I sipped my coffee. He stayed, and it killed him. Calvin looked down. There's something you should see. He pulled a folded letter from his jacket and slid it across the table. I found this in a box of my stuff. From Liam, never sent. I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Cal, I messed up. I should have stood by you. I let them turn me into something I'm not. I'm trying to fix it. I'm changing my will. I'm leaving everything to Stella and Noah. I want out. I'm done pretending. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll look after them. I'm sorry. L. My hands shook. He was going to leave them. Calvin nodded. Looks like it. I folded the letter and slid it into my bag. Thank you. He hesitated. I meant what I said. I want to help, if you'll let me. I looked at him, really looked. The same eyes as Liam, but softer, sadder. No arrogance, just quiet resolve. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. That night, I tucked Noah into bed and sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. I watched the stars and thought about the letter, about Calvin, about the way Liam had tried, too late, to break free. I wasn't too late. I had time. I had a plan. And now I had an ally. The first time Calvin helped Noah build a birdhouse, I stood at the kitchen window and watched them like I was watching someone else's life. Noah held the hammer too tight, tongue poking out in concentration while Calvin crouched beside him, guiding his hands. Gentle, Calvin said. Like this. Let the hammer do the work. Noah looked up at him. Are you a builder? Calvin grinned. Not really. but I've broken enough stuff in my life to know how to fix a few things. Noah giggled, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not grief, not anger, something warmer, dangerous, but warm. Later, when Noah was asleep, I found Calvin in the garage, sanding the edges of the birdhouse. You didn't have to do all that, I said. He looked up. I wanted to. I leaned against the doorway. He likes you. I like him. We didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I asked, why are you still here? He set the sander down. Because I think your war is mine too. That was the first time I kissed him. It wasn't planned, it wasn't even romantic. It was messy and sudden and full of years we'd both lost. But it stuck. And after that, he didn't leave. We didn't rush anything. Noah called him Cal, and Calvin never pushed for more. He was just there, at bedtime, at breakfast, on rainy days when we built pillow forts and watched old cartoons. He never tried to be Liam. He was just himself, steady, present. 6 months in, we sat across from a lawyer Tyler recommended, someone discreet. Custody? The lawyer asked, flipping through the papers I'd kept hidden in a shoebox under my bed. You signed it over. I signed a piece of paper, I said. Not my soul. Calvin slid the letter from Liam across the table. He was rewriting his will. He wanted Stella and Noah protected. The lawyer read it, then looked at us. You're married? Not yet, Calvin said. But we will be. I looked at him. That was the first I'd heard him say it out loud. The lawyer nodded. There's a clause in family court, best interest of the child. If you're married and Calvin is acting as a parent, we can petition to amend the birth certificate, especially if the biological father is deceased and the original custody agreement was signed under duress. Can we do it quietly? I asked. He smiled. We can do it legally, which is better. It took months. Paperwork, hearings, background checks, but no one from the Douglas family contested it because no one knew. They thought I'd vanished, that I'd taken the money and run. They didn't realize I was building an army. The day we got the new birth certificate in the mail, I sat on the porch and stared at it. Noah Liam Cunningham Douglas. Father, Calvin Douglas. Mother, Stella Cunningham. Calvin came out holding 2 mugs of coffee. Is that it? I handed it to him. He read it, then looked at me. You okay? I think so. He sat beside me. You know they'll find out eventually. I'm counting on it. We got married at the courthouse. No dress, no guests, just Maya, Tyler, and Noah holding a ring box and grinning like he'd just won a prize. Afterward, we went to a diner and ordered pancakes and milkshakes. Calvin let Noah pour syrup until it overflowed. You're gonna rot your teeth, I said. Calvin winked. Worth it. That night, I tucked Noah in and sat beside him. Calvin's your dad now, I said gently. He blinked up at me. I know. You okay with that? He nodded. He makes good pancakes. I laughed, then kissed his forehead. Yeah, he really does. Later, I found Calvin in the living room, flipping through channels. He knows, I said. Calvin looked up. And? He's good. He set the remote down. You ever think about going back? Every day. You scared? I shook my head. I'm ready. He leaned forward. Then let's do it. I pulled out a folder from the drawer. Inside were copies of everything: birth certificate, marriage license, custody documentation. All legal, all airtight. I handed him the folder. Let's see how they like being on the other side. He opened it, flipped through the pages, then looked at me. They won't see it coming. No, I said. They won't. Because while they were busy polishing their silver and pretending to grieve, I was rewriting the story they thought they controlled. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. The gala photo hit my inbox on a Thursday morning. Maya forwarded it with no subject line, just the image: Meredith and Otis standing on a stage under a banner that read Guardians of Tomorrow. Behind them, a slideshow played pictures of smiling children. One of them was Noah, age 4, in a sweater I'd knit while crying myself to sleep. I stared at the screen, my coffee going cold in my hand. Calvin walked in, towel around his neck, fresh from a run. You okay? I turned the laptop toward him. Look at this. He leaned over, then sat down slowly. Is that? Yep, that's our son. On a projector. At a fundraiser. He blinked. How the hell did they get that photo? I scrolled down. They must have pulled it from Liam's old files, or maybe the school from before we left. Calvin frowned. They're using him. They always were. The article attached praised the Douglas family for their commitment to legacy and mentorship, highlighting their guardianship of their late son's child. No mention of me, of Calvin, of the fact that Noah hadn't seen them in over 3 years. They're building their image off a lie, I said. Calvin's jaw tightened. Then let's give them the truth. We got married the following week. Again. This time it wasn't in a courthouse. It was in a field behind our house, just us. Noah, Maya, and Tyler. I wore a simple white dress. Calvin wore suspenders and a crooked tie Noah picked out. When we kissed, Noah clapped so hard he nearly fell over. Do we get cake now? He asked. Absolutely, I said, scooping him up. That night, we filed the final paperwork. New IDs, new school records. Noah was now enrolled under Cunningham Douglas, with us listed as his parents. No mention of Liam, no connection to the old life. It was clean, legal, final. 2 weeks later, I got the email. From unknown sendraprotonmail.com. Subject: They're coming for him again. No body, no signature, just a single attachment, a screenshot of a private investigator's report. My name, my address, a photo of Noah at the park. I sat frozen at the kitchen table, heart pounding. Calvin walked in. What's wrong? I turned the laptop. They found us. He scanned the email. How? I don't know, but they're watching. He grabbed his phone and called Tyler. We need to lock everything down, now. We changed our routines. I stopped posting in the local moms group. Calvin drove Noah to school instead of me. We installed cameras, added locks, and checked the mailbox with gloves. But we didn't run. We'd done that already. This time, we stayed. The winter play was coming up, Noah's first big performance. He was playing a snowflake, and he took it very seriously. I have to twirl, he told us at dinner. Miss Jenny said snowflakes twirl. Calvin nodded solemnly. Then we better practice. We moved the coffee table and spent the next hour spinning in the living room until we were all dizzy and laughing. The night of the play, the auditorium was packed, parents jostled for seats, cameras ready. I wore a black turtleneck and sat in the front row, Calvin's hand in mine. We kept our coats on, just in case. The lights dimmed, the curtain opened. Noah stepped onto the stage, arms out, spinning like his life depended on it. My heart swelled. I clapped until my hands hurt. Then I heard it. The familiar clipped heels. The whisper of perfume I hadn't smelled in years. I turned my head. Meredith. She walked down the aisle like she owned it, Otis behind her, scanning the crowd. They didn't see me, not yet. They were too focused on the stage. Then the announcer stepped up to the mic. Tonight's performers, the Kindergarten Snowflakes featuring Noah Cunningham Douglas, parents, Stella Cunningham and Calvin Douglas. The names echoed through the auditorium. I saw it happen in slow motion. Meredith's mouth parted. Otis froze, gasps rippled through the rows behind us. I turned, made eye contact, and smiled. Calvin leaned in. They know? Let them, I whispered. When the lights came back on, Noah ran into my arms, cheeks flushed. Did I do good? You were perfect, I said, kissing his forehead. We walked out into the lobby, hand in hand. Meredith and Otis were waiting by the doors. Stella? Meredith said, her voice low and sharp. Meredith, I replied, just as cool. Otis stepped forward. You forged documents. We'll have your marriage annulled. That child is ours. Calvin stepped between us. He's not a possession. He's our son. Meredith's eyes narrowed. This isn't over. I reached into my bag and handed her a folded piece of paper. What's this? She snapped. Proof, marriage license, birth certificate, custody documentation, all legal, all final. Otis looked like he'd swallowed a nail. And one more thing. Calvin added, pulling out a second envelope. Liam's letter, the one where he said he was leaving everything to Stella and Noah. He was done with your games. Meredith's lips curled. You think this scares us? No, I said, but it should. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. We'll ruin you in court. I didn't flinch. No, Meredith, you already tried that. This? This is what ruin looks like from your side. Then I turned and walked out, Noah in one hand, Calvin in the other. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. The next morning, I found a dead rose on our front porch. Just one, black stemmed, wilted, no note, no card, just the flower laid neatly against the welcome mat like a threat dressed in poetry. I picked it up with two fingers and dropped it straight into the trash. Meredith, Calvin said behind me. Obviously, I muttered, she's not subtle. She's also not done. We spent the rest of the morning calling our lawyer, scanning the security footage, and double checking every lock on the house. Tyler came by with a fresh set of legal documents and a look on his face I hadn't seen since the funeral. They're filing for emergency custody, he said, handing me the papers, claiming fraud, emotional endangerment, false documentation. I skimmed the stack. They're throwing everything at the wall. Calvin leaned over my shoulder. They won't win. They don't care about winning, Tyler said. They care about bleeding you dry. I walked outside, needing air. Maya was already pulling up in her car. She stepped out with a bag of groceries and a look that said she knew everything before I even opened my mouth. Get in, she said. We're going for a drive. I didn't argue. We ended up at a coffee shop 2 towns over. I stared at my latte while Maya watched me like a hawk. You okay? She asked. No. Good. You shouldn't be. This is war. I looked up at her. They're using Noah as a pawn. They always were, but now you've got the board and the king. I smiled despite myself. You've been watching too much chess drama. She leaned in. You need to hit back harder, publicly. I hesitated. You mean media? Controlled media, she said. I know someone, a journalist. She's been sniffing around the Douglas family for years. If we give her the right story, the right documents. I nodded slowly. Scorched earth. Exactly. Back home, Calvin was in the garage with Noah, helping him paint the birdhouse again, this time blue and green like a dragon's cave, according to Noah. I watched them through the window, then opened my laptop. I sent Maya everything, the letter from Liam, the birth certificate, the custody change, even the check. Yes, I'd kept a photo of it before I let the ink bleed down the sink. By the end of the week, the article was live. The Price of Legacy, a family's attempt to erase a widow and reclaim a heir. It hit like a bomb. By Monday, the school was fielding calls. Other parents were whispering. The gala photo was now the centerpiece of a scandal piece with quotes from anonymous sources about Meredith's manipulation, Otis's bullying, and the family's obsession with image over integrity. Brinley showed up at my door that night. I hadn't seen her since Liam's funeral. She looked tired, older, like the weight of their name had finally started to crush her too. I read the article, she said. I let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch like she didn't belong in her own skin. I want to help. Calvin walked in from the kitchen and froze. You sure about that? I am, she said. I'm tired of pretending they're good people. You knew what they did, I said. You stayed silent. I was scared, she whispered. They threatened to cut me off, said they'd ruin my husband's business. I didn't know what to do. And now? I asked. I want to testify. In court, I'll tell them everything. How they blackmailed Calvin into leaving, how they tried to bribe Liam's mistress after he died. I blinked. Mistress? She nodded. Her name was Elise. She worked at the firm. Meredith paid her to disappear. I found the emails. Calvin exhaled sharply. Jesus. I'll give them to your lawyer, Brinley said. I'm done protecting them. The trial date was set for 2 weeks later. We walked into that courtroom with everything documents, testimony, the article, the letter. Brinley sat on the witness stand and told the truth, her voice shaking but clear. They didn't care about Noah, she said. They cared about control. Meredith sat stone faced. Otis looked like he'd swallowed glass. Their lawyer tried to spin it, claimed concern, family duty, emotional instability on my part. I didn't flinch. I stood on the stand and said, they offered me $10,000 to disappear. I took it, not because I was giving up, but because I was getting ready. The judge didn't even need a recess. Custody, denied. Counterclaims, pending. Reputation, shattered. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I didn't answer any. I just held Noah's hand and walked straight to the car. Inside, he looked up at me. Did we win? I smiled. We did. Calvin reached over and squeezed my hand. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the storm had passed. But I knew better. This wasn't the end. It was just the cost of telling the truth. The courthouse lobby was buzzing when we stepped outside. Reporters, flashing cameras, people murmuring like they'd just witnessed a public execution. In a way, they had. Meredith stood by the marble column, arms crossed, lips tight. Otis was already halfway to the car, face red and jaw clenched like he was chewing rocks. I didn't stop walking, neither did Calvin, but Meredith did. Stella, she called, sharp and cold, like a slap across the face. I turned. Yes? This isn't over. I smiled. You've said that before. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you've won because of a few signatures? A court ruling? You think that matters? Calvin stepped between us. Back off. Meredith ignored him. You forged a family. You think that makes you one of us? I don't want to be one of you, I said. I'm raising Noah to be better than that. Her eyes narrowed. You're nothing. A waitress with a sob story. And yet, I said, pulling the folded paper from my coat pocket, this nothing just beat you in court. She snatched the paper from my hand and unfolded it. It was the final custody ruling, stamped, signed, sealed. You think this is the end? She hissed. No, I said. I think this is the part where you finally realize you lost. Otis appeared beside her, grabbing her arm. Let's go. She didn't move for a second. Then she crumpled the paper in her fist and turned away. We watched them walk off, Calvin's arm sliding around my waist. I looked up at him. She's going to come back harder. She can try, he said. We're not hiding anymore. Back at the house, Maya was waiting on the porch with a bottle of champagne and two plastic cups. Don't judge, she said. It's all I had in the car. I laughed. You're ridiculous. She handed me a cup. To freedom. We clinked and drank. Noah was inside with Tyler, building a Lego city on the living room floor. I still can't believe Brinley showed up, Maya said, settling beside me on the steps. She had receipts. She was done being their puppet. She's braver than I thought. I nodded. She saw what they were willing to do, to their own blood. Maya leaned back on her elbows. You know what the best part is? What? They don't even know how much worse it's about to get. I raised an eyebrow. What did you do? She grinned. I may have forwarded the court documents to a few journalists, and the photos, and the emails from Brinley. I stared at her. You're a menace. Thank you. The next morning, the media storm hit like a tidal wave. Douglas family legacy crumbles after custody. Battle exposes lies, bribes, and hidden affairs. The headline was everywhere: local news, online blogs, even a segment on the morning talk show. The article included screenshots of the original check Meredith gave me, excerpts from Liam's letter, and the court's ruling. But the real bombshell? Elise. She came forward. Her interview aired 3 days later. She sat in a soft lit studio, hands folded in her lap, voice shaking as she described her relationship with Liam and how Meredith offered her $50,000 to leave town and never speak about the baby she'd lost just weeks after Liam's death. I watched the interview with my hand over my mouth. They painted him as a saint, Elise said, eyes glassy. But he was scared. He wanted out. He told me he didn't trust his parents. He said they'd do anything to protect their name. The host leaned in. Do you believe his death was an accident? Elise paused. I don't know, but I know he was planning to leave them, and now he's gone. The next day, Calvin got a call from a private investigator friend of Tyler's. You're going to want to sit down for this, the guy said. He brought over a file, photos, phone records, credit card charges from the week of Liam's death. There's a pattern, the investigator said, laying out the timeline. Liam had a meeting scheduled with a lawyer. He never showed, but someone used his card an hour later at a gas station 20 miles away. Who? Calvin asked. Footage is grainy, but it's a man, not Liam. And the car? Registered to one of Otis's shell companies. I felt the air leave my lungs. You think they had something to do with it? I asked. I can't say for sure, the investigator said, but it doesn't look clean. I looked at Calvin. His hands were clenched, his face unreadable. They killed him, he said quietly. Or they made sure no one looked too hard. We sat in silence for a long time. Then I stood up. We go public. All of it. Calvin nodded. Everything. That night, I sat down with Noah to read him a story. He curled up beside me, thumb in his mouth, the way he always did when he was tired. Mommy? He asked. Yeah, baby? Are the bad people gone now? I looked at him, at his wide eyes and soft curls. They're not gone, I said, but they can't hurt us anymore. He nodded. Okay. I kissed his forehead and turned out the light. Downstairs, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the porch. Calvin joined me, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. They thought they could scare you off, he said. They thought wrong. He clinked his glass against mine. To the end? I shook my head. To the beginning. The courthouse was quieter this time. No cameras, no crowd, just the sound of heels on tile and the occasional squeak of a rolling briefcase. This wasn't about custody anymore. This was civil court, defamation, emotional damages, and the slow public unraveling of Meredith and Otis's carefully curated empire. Calvin and I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped under the table. Across the aisle, Meredith sat stiff as a statue, dressed in a muted gray suit that probably cost more than our car. Otis looked worse, pale, sweating like the walls were closing in. Our lawyer stood. Your Honor, we submit evidence that the defendants knowingly and maliciously manipulated custody proceedings, misrepresented the status of the child's guardianship to the public, and engaged in a pattern of harassment against our clients. The judge nodded. Proceed. The first witness was Maya. She stepped up in her blazer, hair pulled back, holding a manila folder like it was a sword. I was there when Stella received the check, she said. I watched her cry for 2 hours before she packed a bag and left, not because she was giving up, but because she was scared, and they made her that way. Meredith's lawyer objected. Speculation. Overruled, the judge said. Continue. Maya opened the folder. Here's a copy of the check. Here's the email Meredith sent after Stella left, referring to her as the girl who took the money and ran. Here's the private investigator's report, tracking Stella across state lines. I glanced at Meredith. Her jaw twitched, but she said nothing. Next came Brinley. She looked nervous, but she stood tall. My parents forced Calvin out of the family, she said. They told him he was a disgrace. They threatened to ruin his life if he didn't cut ties. They did the same to Liam when they found out he was rewriting his will. The courtroom murmured. You're saying your brother was changing his will before his death? The judge asked. Yes, Brinley said. He told me. He wanted everything to go to Stella and Noah. He said he was done pretending. And what happened after he died? My parents paid Liam's mistress to disappear. They told me she was a threat to the family's image. Do you have evidence of this? Yes. She held up a flash drive. Emails, bank transfers, all of it. Otis stood suddenly. That's enough! The judge banged the gavel. Sit down, sir. He didn't move. She's lying. She's bitter. She's always been weak. Brinley flinched. I stood. She's stronger than you'll ever be. The judge pointed at Otis. One more outburst, and I'll have you removed. He sat down, face flushed and shaking. The next hour was a blur of documents, testimony, and cross examinations. Calvin spoke about the letter from Liam, about the night we got the anonymous email, about the fear of being followed, the cameras we installed, the dead rose on our porch. Then I took the stand. I looked directly at Meredith. You tried to erase me, I said. You treated my son like a trophy. You used his face to raise money, to gain sympathy, to polish your image. You told me I was nothing. And maybe I was, back then. But I'm not anymore. Her lawyer tried to object. The judge waved him off. I built a life, I said, with no help from you. I protected my son when you tried to take him. I married a man who loves him like he's always been his, and now I'm standing here, not because I want revenge, but because I want peace, and you made that impossible. I stepped down. The judge called a recess. Outside, in the hallway, Brinley sat beside me. You okay? She asked. I think so. She looked down at her hands. They're going to hate me. They already did, I said. Now they just can't hide it. The ruling came the next morning. The judge awarded us damages for emotional distress, legal fees, and slander. But more than that, he issued a formal statement condemning the Douglas family for abuse of power, manipulation of legal processes, and a pattern of psychological coercion. It was on the front page by noon. Douglas dynasty falls. Judge condemns abuse of power in custody scandal. Calvin and I sat on the porch that night, watching Noah chase fireflies in the yard. You think they'll ever come back from this? He asked. No, I said. Not really. He nodded. Good. Noah ran up, holding a glowing jar. Look, I caught 5. I smiled. That's amazing, baby. He held it up to Calvin. You want to let them go with me? Absolutely, Calvin said, standing. I watched them walk to the edge of the yard, open the lid, and lift the jar. The tiny lights floated up and away, blinking like stars. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting. I felt like I'd won. The letter had been sitting in the bottom of Liam's old coat pocket for years. I found it while packing up the last of the boxes from the storage unit, the one I hadn't touched since the night we left. I almost didn't open it. I thought I'd read everything he ever wrote, but this one was different. The envelope was sealed and yellowed at the edges, addressed to me in handwriting that looked rushed. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, and peeled it open. Stella, if you're reading this, I didn't get to say what I needed to. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know I've messed up. I've let them control too much, and I've hurt you because of it. I'm trying to fix it. I've changed the will. I've told Calvin everything. I'm going to meet with the lawyer tomorrow. If something happens to me, please don't trust them. Don't let them near Noah. They'll twist him into something he's not. Protect him, and protect yourself. I love you. I'm sorry. La. I read it twice before I realized I was shaking. Calvin walked in, carrying a box labeled books, and stopped when he saw me on the floor. You okay? I held up the letter. He sat beside me. Another one? I handed it to him without speaking. He read it slowly, eyes scanning every word like they might change if he blinked. When he finished, he looked at me. He knew. I nodded. He was scared. He was trying to get out. I folded the letter and slid it into my bag. They made sure he didn't. We didn't speak for a while. The silence wasn't heavy, it was just full. Later that night, we stood in the kitchen while Noah colored at the table. The radio played softly. Calvin stirred pasta on the stove. I poured a glass of wine and leaned against the counter. Do you think they'll come back? I asked. Calvin shook his head. Not after the ruling, not after Elise's interview, not after Brinley. But they still have money, connections. He turned to face me. They had everything, and you still beat them. I let that sit for a second. I'm not sure I'm the same person I was, I said. You're not, he said. You're stronger. I looked over at Noah. He was humming to himself, drawing a dragon with a crown. He doesn't even remember them, I said quietly. Calvin came over and put his arms around me. Good. We ate dinner at the table, all 3 of us. Noah told us about a kid at school who tried to eat a crayon. Calvin pretended to be horrified. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. After Noah went to bed, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders. Calvin joined me, handing me a mug of tea. Remember when we used to be afraid of them? I asked. He nodded. I remember hiding behind curtains when the doorbell rang. I remember thinking I'd never get my son back. He looked at me. You didn't just get him back, you gave him a life. I sipped the tea. What now? He smiled. We live. The next morning, I took the letter to our lawyer. He read it carefully, then looked up at me. It's not a smoking gun, he said, but it's something. Could it be enough to open an investigation? He nodded slowly. If we pair it with the credit card records, the gas station footage, Elise's statement, maybe. Do it, I said. He closed the folder. You're sure? Yes. I walked out of the office and into the sunlight. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel afraid. I just felt ready. Back home, Noah was in the yard with Calvin, chasing bubbles. I stood there for a second, watching them. Calvin caught Noah mid run and spun him around, both of them laughing so loud it echoed. I walked over and joined them. Noah reached for my hand. Mommy, we're trying to pop all the bubbles before they hit the ground. I grinned. That sounds like a mission. It is, he said seriously. A very important one. We spent the next hour running through the yard, popping every last bubble. When the sun started to set, we lay in the grass, all three of us staring at the sky. You know what I think? Noah said. What? Calvin asked. I think we're the best family ever. I looked at Calvin. He looked at me. Yeah, buddy, I said. I think you're right. Sometimes karma takes its time. Sometimes it waits, watches, lets people dig their own graves with silk gloves on. And sometimes, if you're lucky, karma hands you the shovel. They thought karma didn't recognize their address. Turns out, sometimes karma lets you deliver the package yourself.